Hey guys, it's Tammy. Hope everyone's having a great day wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in or checking this video out. If you're new to me, welcome. A little bit about me. I am internationally certified master clinical aromatherapist. I like to call myself a phytopharmacist, and that's a new title I've assigned myself. I've gone through a few. So if you go back and look at my other videos, you'll actually hear me call myself a couple of different things. But the bottom line is that my focus, especially after, and it really came to light when I wrote my recent blog post on 6 reasons why essential oils need to be part of a health assessment. And this goes for all health professions. So feel free to check that out. That link is in the description box below. Yet what I feel like this is, aromagenomics really is a model that fits within the complementary alternative medicine world as well as the conventional model as an integrative adjunctive modality. So we have CAM and we have IM. Like it. But the whole point to it is it integrates today's knowledge with the wisdom of nature. So welcome. I hope you find information here that you can use. If not, you're welcome to join my Aromatherapy is a Lifestyle Facebook group, where I start to touch on a lot of this, getting into CYP 450 enzymes, the constituents of oils, and the more this evolves, the more I'm actually sharing with people with regards to really knowing what's in your bottle and being aware that natural is not always safe. I've written a couple of pieces about that. It came out specifically when I found an article circulating on Facebook regarding elderberries and their ability to, I guess, inactivate flu. It inactivates the flu virus or protect ourselves from the flu virus. And it's great information, right? And at the same time, it's harmful. It's actually dangerous to say it that way, because the article, while it works to demonstrate or illustrate how elderberries, or it doesn't really go into the chemistry of it, but it actually just goes into explaining why we should be including elderberries. I mean, I have somebody around here that I know that produces what they call it's an elderberry elixir, but it's dangerous. It's absolutely dangerous. And here's why. Because you cannot, if you're taking any type of cancer medication, it doesn't, chemo, it's dangerous because there's chemical interactions between the two. Same thing to be said for diabetic medication, as well as theophylline, which is respiratory medication. So there's a number of and you can read about it more in the post. Actually, there's another blog post. It's one reason why. So those two links are down below. And it's about like such things as like arnica. We talk a lot about arnica, and yet arnica is very high in a constituent titled or called Helen Allen, which while it has profound health benefits, or it's very helpful in the area of health, it's also a blood thinner. It's a platelet aggregator. It's blood thinning qualities. It's an anticoagulant. It's the reason why it can help prevent or the bruising. It's an anticoagulant because bruising is because the blood coagulates. So it's an anticoagulant. But yet when we go into surgery, and I know this firsthand after having gone through a couple of surgeries, and they tell you very specifically to your face, blood thinners, warfarin, they get into all the medications, they get into aspirin, and then they get into things like your fish oils, and I don't even think garlic was even mentioned, but there's just a few things that they talk about in the way of natural, but arnica is not mentioned. In fact, arnica is even suggested at one point with one of my surgical oncologists. So these are, it's important to know that natural isn't safe. And so that's the reason why I'm sitting here today, because when I started sharing about this on social media, a really good friend of mine came back and said, I probably should think about, rethink the way I say these things, because in his opinion, natural is not being celebrated or studied enough, and that there's a lot of benefits to natural. And at first I was a little bit, and then I realized I really respect him. I really do respect him and his point of view. He is highly sensitized. He's a very big activist in psychotropic medications in young people. And he's observed and aware of a number of young people who have lost their lives as a result of taking these medications. And so I recognize his sensitivity level, and I also appreciate his interest in promoting natural remedies as an alternative to taking such medications. So, like I said, at first there was like a little bit of a rub, but then I realized we're coming at this from two very different perspectives. And it wasn't like he was being rude at all. He was just being thoughtful, and he was wanting to make, and be helpful. And the thing is that that's my entire mission, honestly. I forgot to thank everybody who has been with me on this journey all this time. I was introducing myself to anybody who's new, and for those of you who have been with me, thank you very much for being here. I didn't mean to ignore you. I just kind of like jumped into this, so please forgive me. But that's the whole point of this video, because as I was hiking earlier today, something occurred to me in respect to this point of view that was shared to me. And I don't want to name names, but he's well known for his activity in the area of healthier alternatives and putting young people on these psychotropic meds. So again, from his perspective, I can really appreciate what he's doing. And then it occurred to me, these people that have lost their lives, and it's not just these young people. I mean, if you actually search the number of people that have died, lost their lives due to medications, it's actually pretty staggering. And there's quite a few people out there that are really advocating for the use of natural over pharmaceuticals and really up against the pharmaceutical industry. Now, my background does include pharmacology, so I have a great deal of respect for the pharmaceutical industry in the fact that it's knowledge that we've acquired through the study of plant constituents. You see, this is my specialty, is really studying the plant constituents as they relate to drug development, human physiology, and potential interactions. So while there's a lot of people out here, I mean, right now, all of their names escape me, but I've seen a lot of work around this and highlighting, going to the degree of highlighting the numbers, which are staggering, of people that have lost their lives, and of course they're blaming pharmaceuticals. The truth is, you guys, there's no telling what caused the death. It's unfortunate, and this may lose a few people with what I'm about to say, but we all have a reason for being here. It's not necessarily to be the next big celebrity, to be the next big royal or whatever, or wannabe royal. It's not that. Yeah, that was a little bit catty, I know. That's a whole nother video. But and then again, so let me just skip over that part. Let's just say that there's a reason for all of us to be here. And again, it's not necessarily out of notoriety. Some of us, I believe, are here because we're here to teach lessons. And that doesn't necessarily mean sitting in front of a camera or standing in front of a classroom. It could very well be developing an illness and people are messaging me. Sorry for the distraction. I really believe that there's a reason for all of us, and not every single one of them, not every mission, if you will, is glorious or graceful or notable. Some of it is, it's an interesting, I don't know why I'm hesitating to even say this. I feel like sometimes some of these, we have people in our lives that get sick, and it's to create a contrast. I really believe in contrast. And so, even in my own father's case and his health, it created a contrast for me. The way I was raised created a contrast for me so that I was able to choose a different path or a different way of viewing something. And so I see this happening all over the place. And so there's a mission. And again, it doesn't have to be this big glorified mission. It might be just for those immediately around you. And so my point to that is when we've, and this is going to be very sensitive because I can only imagine. I am the sibling of someone who died at a very young age, although not due to medications per se. It's I don't want to be, I'm not being insensitive at this point to say that possibly that some of these people that have lost their lives as a result of engaging in that are currently being indicated as pharmaceutically related might actually have been here to teach us something a little bit different, which is that natural and pharmaceutical don't necessarily work well together, and that natural is not always safe. Our go-to is to blame the man-made chemicals. Now, in the case of depression, I think, and even anxiety and ADHD, I mean, there's a whole host of mental mood imbalances, if you will, that don't necessarily warrant medications immediately. That there are ways to do this with oils. And in fact, the more medications you use, the less oils that you can use. Your little scope of selection kind of shrinks. At the same time, we don't know what these people were doing as alternatives or potentially, hoping to add things to their life, natural remedies as well. So to go back and say that, if people, I mean, I have firsthand, you parent to a child who I had adopted and was displaying really erratic behavior. And all the clinician did was sit there and ask an 8-year-old girl some certain questions, and then she diagnosed her as bipolar. Really didn't take my word. I mean, she really didn't. I mean, that's just it. Mental health, mood disorders are generally diagnosed not through blood tests, but through observation and conversation. So a lot of these medications are being administered I do agree with my friend, at too young of an age, and that there's potential alternatives that can be used for things like that. A number of the citrus oils, Roman chamomile. I mean, there's a few of them that you can actually use to help uplift, help soothe. There's a number of them that you can use, like I said. But the more you start using medications, the scope of selection really shrinks. So that said, okay, these people that have lost their lives as a result of this, is it really the medications, or was it a contract, with your God, or, with an energetic contract, with whatever you believe in? Is there a contract, potentially an agreement, if you will, to come into this world and go down this path? And this would be the result of that path in order to teach us, in order to show us. And what I'm hearing when I hear people talk about people losing their lives due to pharmaceuticals, we're not hearing about all the other stuff that they were potentially doing. We don't know how many other herbs they were taking. We don't know what other supplements they were taking. We don't even know for that matter if they were using essential oils. So how do we know it was the pharmaceutical? See, this is where, and I just got done doing a radio show on responsibility. This is where we've got to stop blaming people. Blame is not responsible. Responsibility means the ability to respond instead of reacting. And our current MO is to react to such things and come out against an institution or an entity and blame them for our loved one's death. Now, look, I get the grief. I get the sadness. I get the fucking pain. I get it. I've lost people in my life. Like I said, my sister, she was 13. So I get the pain. So I'm not attempting to be insensitive. I'm saying I'm trying to give these people a purpose. And what if their purpose was to actually begin to highlight this, but instead, as a collective, we're running around blaming a pharmaceutical industry when in fact it could be something else. It could be the combination. I know firsthand of an Amish girl I was supporting with oils, and there was a little bit of consulting going on with her, she and her mother, and that she was also taking pharmaceuticals. And out of the blue, somebody introduced her to a CBD oil. Now, what was in it and what kind of CBD oil, I have no idea. But that young woman introduced the CBD oil into a cocktail of psychotropics and ended up walking out in front of a bus. Now, she survived. She ended up in a treatment facility because somebody thought she was crazy, but it's the combination. Okay, I'm not saying the CBD oil is bad. What I'm saying is somebody just said, hey, it's natural, it should be okay. And so she combined it with these other medications, and it backfired. That's called an adverse reaction. If what's interesting to me is if she had lost her life, do you know what they would have blamed it on? It would have been blamed on the medication. But she was fine. She was absolutely fine using oils and medication. She'd been doing this for months. She was fine. It was the introduction of that one other natural supplement that sent her over the edge. So that's the part I'm getting at. It's like it's very important to know how to mix these things and understand that natural is not always safe because they do interact with the pharmaceuticals. And I'm not saying that pharmaceuticals are always the answer. In some cases, they are necessary. We have the capability, the knowledge to study these plant constituents, to learn from these plants, and to develop highly concentrated medications that can offset a lot of the degeneration and upset that's going on, or I should say maybe instability, that's happening in the human body. That's brilliant. But learning how to integrate that with the wisdom of nature is where aromagenomics comes in. And what I feel like a lot of these people that we've lost is what their message is. It's learning how to integrate this because somebody is not warning people. And so for me to be told I need to watch what I'm saying, I don't think so. I think it's time to step out and go, we need to be paying attention. There need to be red flags attached to these natural supplements and not just going, because just imagine somebody out there that hasn't heard me say anything and they decide, well, they're on, chemo, they're in the middle of the cold and flu season. Well, I'll just go take some elderberry, or I'll drink some elderberry elixir, or I'll do something elderberry in order to prevent myself from getting the flu. It's not, because, well, I haven't had the flu shot, so I need to do this because it's natural. It's going to be safe. But they're taking chemo. There's no telling where this is going to go. It's not safe. So we have to be more mindful about the information we're sharing out there. That's really, and I know that this doesn't necessarily go well with a lot of people, but this is kind of like, this is my mission. This is what I'm here to do. We have a world of chemicals. Chemicals does not mean toxic. It means the ability to influence an activity. That's what a chemical does. It's a reaction. It creates a reaction. And so as human beings, we have the ability to be more responsible. We have the ability, instead of reacting and being, terrified by all this stuff and just like taking everything at the same time, learning how to respond to our body's needs as opposed to reacting to our body's needs, and just, again, duplicating the mechanism of action, which is what I talked about before, or using things that potentially conflict at the liver enzyme level. These are significant concerns. And again, how do we really know that anybody that's died from taking a pharmaceutical actually died from the pharmaceutical and not an interaction with something else that they were doing? We don't know. And until we actually discuss that and really put that information on the table, everybody's living in the dark and thinking that the pharmaceuticals are bad. I'm here advocating for both natural and pharmaceutical if you're taking them, because they can work together. Now, if you're somebody who wants to do the complementary, the CAM way, that's great. There's ways to do that too. And again, your scope of ability broadens because you're not mixing it with pharmaceuticals. And then again, not everything is this affects everybody the same way. So, and you don't have to overdo it. I mean, I say that because I've had people come to me and they've been taking thousands of dollars in supplements a month. It's crazy. I'm sorry for the glare. Sorry for the glare. I'll just kind of go this way. I'll scoot this way. Hopefully, yeah, that did it. So that is really what, and again, it's just something to consider. I don't necessarily want to argue with anybody about it. I mean, it's just the way I've been thinking because this is the direction I'm going with this work is really understanding what's in our bottles, what is in the oil more specifically, because just because it's on a label doesn't mean that, or there's a name on the label does not mean that if you compare that label to a constituent list that you pull up on the internet doesn't mean it's the same thing. You actually have to know what batch you have, and you should be getting those constituents, especially if you're buying it from a large company. You deserve that. You need to know what's in that oil because that way you can make a more thoughtful choice on whether or not that oil is for you or whether or not it'll mix with medications if you take medications. Another aspect that I wanted to share here today is kind of briefly describe. I've talked about this in the past, but I wanted to say a little bit more about the body is designed to survive as well as thrive. Now, a good example is the endocannabinoid system, which works in tandem with the endogenous opiate system. Now, I've heard people say, well, the endocannabinoid system isn't working, and that's where I need to smoke pot. That's bullshit. So it means you're stressed because the endogenous opiate system and the endocannabinoid system are both recognized for their ability to modulate the stress response. Now, if the stress response, and again, that's if they're working in tandem. If they're not working in tandem, and your body is chronically stressed as a or because it's not as a result of them not working together. Them not working together is a result of the stress. And that may sound strange, and this is where part of us responding to what our body's needs are is very, very important. But there again, if the body is in chronic stress mode, which can happen due to mental, emotional, and or environmental pollutants, it produces oxidative stress, and then it produces inflammation. Okay, so the very same genetic complex that produces the chemical that helps us to thrive and be strong and happy also produces the very same chemical, the oxidative stress. Or I should say, yeah, it's the very same gene that produces the oxidative stress. So good example is nitric oxide. When the body is stable and thriving, it's producing nitric oxide, and it's helping to produce the chemistry in the brain, and it's helping to keep our heart and our lungs healthy. It's helping to keep, our digestive system is happy. That's a really good thing. And I've talked about nitric oxide a lot in the past. The endocannabinoid system, when the body is thriving, is producing anandamide, which is a Sanskrit word for bliss. And that just means generally we're just happy. We're just happy campers. We're just we're oming our way through life. Yet, when the body's stressed, it produces, I always screw this word up because it's just so funny. It's arachidonic, I think it's arachidonic acid. If I will spell it correctly in the description box, but it's a type of acid that is produced in lieu of anandamide, and that happens when the body is stressed. And this is signaled by histamine, specifically the histamine 1 receptor, and that histamine is in response to environmental, potentially environmental threats. And so the system becomes activated. We have a little CPU unit in our body, kind of that monitors and communicates with the DNA. These are the acetylation and the phosphorylation pathways, which notifies the DNA when there's a potential threat in the area. This is how chemicals communicate via this pathway to our very DNA, in which case, if there is a threat, then the DNA has what's known as transponal elements, which will relocate along the strand in order to produce the oxidative stress and inflammation necessary to support the well-being and survival, more specifically, of the organism. Now, once the threat's over, all of that gets reversed. So this is what signals the A acid, I'll just call it that, to be produced. Okay? The point to all of this is the body has the ability to regulate itself. And the reason why I strongly advocate for the oils, and I'm completing actually a list right now of the most popular medications, and along with CYP450 enzymes affected by oils or constituents of oils, and a safe list of oils, which I believe I've narrowed it down to 5. And the reason for that is, unless this is really for professionals who are working with people that don't want to take the time or don't have the time, or it's not in their practice to assess individuals for health issues or medications. So just to kind of bottom line it, there's only a handful of oils that really can be used universally. After which, if the person really wants more specific oils for them, then recognizing, discussing the types of medications that they take. This is medications for longer than 30 days. Okay, if you're just taking short term, I'm not worried about that. This is somebody who's actually living on medications, one or more at least for 30 days or longer. And at that point, then, like I said, there's only 5 that you're really be able to work with that would at least begin to help stabilize that stress reaction and help to regulate those systems that I mentioned. And at the same time, hopefully, begin to relieve some kind of pressure that you can begin to possibly come off of. This is just as a generalization. Now, if you're taking antidepressants and and diabetic medications, there may be some more that you can use. If it's high blood pressure, there may be even more that you can use if you're not diabetic. So again, it really, really depends on the medications. But as a whole, if somebody is working with clients and isn't in the position to be assessing their pharmaceuticals and their health, at least knowing which oils would be safe, that's not going to cause an interaction. Now, that said, just because there's a short-term benefit to an oil, that's the long-term benefit that I'm talking about, or the long-term reactions that could potentially occur. This is the reason why a lot of oils get 86 right off the bat, because of their influence on the endocrine system. We are living in an endocrine disruptive world. So I was talking to somebody earlier today, because my breast cancer is estrogen positive, meaning it feeds off of estrogen. I have decided to go through and take the aromatase. Aromatase inhibitor is something that they give to women who are postmenopausal. And although my medical oncologist wasn't sure, because there's because of my age, it could potentially that I just had not. I was no longer having a menstrual cycle, but I hadn't gone through menopause yet. And because I've never had symptoms of menopause. So we went and did a blood test, and it's confirmed that I actually did go through menopause. So I'm postmenopausal, and which means that I can take the aromatase inhibitor, which is going to block estrogen from. And the reason why I'm going to go along with this is because they did leave some cancer. And there's a potential that I may actually have something going on in the left breast. They're watching that for the next few months. And yeah, so but here's the significance to all of that. When they ran my hormone blood test, it came back that yes, it was confirmed I was postmenopausal, but I was at such low levels of estrogen, because what they were concerned about was that I'd been taking estrogen therapy, hormone therapy, which would have caused the cancer. I'm like, no, I'm not. So that is very indicative of an estrogen-rich environment. And what I mean by that, for those of you who are new, is we live, like I said, in an endocrine disruptive world. A lot of them act like estrogens in the body. They don't register on blood tests. So they just simply act like estrogen. And what that means is estrogen, besides being a reproductive hormone, is also a stress hormone, signaling the autonomic nervous system and the immune system. So the fact that I don't have any estrogen per se that I'm producing in my body, yet I have estrogen positive cancer, indicates that there is estrogen in the environment. And so when I was talking to somebody earlier today about this, he actually says to me, well, what are you talking about, the plants? And I went, well, yeah, when I say estrogen, xenoestrogens or environmental estrogens, I'm not referring just to man-made chemicals. I'm referring to even plant, nature-made chemicals, which show up in oils, they show up in foods, flax seeds, soy. These are prevalent. Okay, these are phytoestrogens, and it means they act like estrogen. They don't replace estrogen. That's a myth that many people think that that's what's happening. It's going to replace estrogen. It doesn't do that. And although we recognize estrogen for being beneficial for, longevity and vitality, bone health and so forth, right? That's the reason why we do estrogen hormone therapy, sex drive, and all that. Uh, those phytoestrogens just don't do that. Okay, they're not just doing that. Estrogen is a primary signaling molecule, not just a reproductive molecule. So again, this is another reason why I've slimmed down this list of oils. And so understanding what people are taking is essential. And if we don't want to do that, or we don't have the time to do that, just working within this framework of just, like I said, 4 or 5 oils is at least helpful. And it gives your clients what they're looking for. And so I hope that makes sense. So people who are interested in what other oils they might be able to use while taking pharmaceuticals, that's something I can help you with. One last thing I wanted to mention, and that is menthol. I've done a video on this, and I would invite you to go back and take a look at it because it is a challenge to stop using menthol. One of the things I want to say right now is that menthol is a known inhibitor of the CYP3A4 liver enzyme. Do you know what medications there's out of all the medications, and I think at this point I listed, I'm working on 45 of them. 25 out of the 30 that I've looked at so far actually all inhibit or influence activity at the CYP3A4 enzyme. But the more specific ones are respiratory ones, meaning your Singulair, your albuterol, those ones for those asthma medications. Are all cleared at the 3A4, which is the same thing that the menthol is a known inhibitor for. So we're talking about the potential of interactions, not to mention the fact that by using menthol and all these menthol products, what we're doing is we're opening up our lung tissue because it increases lung tissue permeability. And so we're breathing in all this stuff. Cut out the menthol, especially if your kids are, or you are asthmatic and you're needing these other medications. The last thing you honestly need is menthol. You're not helping yourself. And there again, now we're looking at potential other interactions. And I would hate to see anybody else be marked as one more person who lost their life to a pharmaceutical. It's not the pharmaceutical, it's not the natural, it's the way we're combining them. That's how I want to say that. So if I upset you, I don't mean to. I'm just wanting to be matter of fact about this. And I don't mean any insensitivity to those of you who have lost somebody as a result of medications at all. I see a purpose in this. I see a gift in this. And I've had to go through it with my own sister. So please recognize that we're trying to make sense of life, and this is my way of doing so. Thank you very much for being here. Please visit my website and sign up for my email list, and let's take this into the next decade. All right, thanks, you guys.